go out behind and look up at that tail, and you feel little. And that thing is huge.
I like the sound of the airplanes.
Running engines is amazing.
A typical day for me is loud. After 30 years, I still stop and watch every single airplane take off. It's the simple stuff like that. I never get tired of it. I get asked a lot, what do you do on aircraft maintenance? Well, what does that entail? Fixing the things that fly over your house on a regular basis.
That small cadre of people that are in the know in fixing aircraft.
The hydraulic guys, they work on the vanes. The jet guys, they're the heartbeat. They're the ones that keep the plane going. The avionics is the brains. It tells the airplane how to fly. Crew chiefs are the mechanics. They're like the orthopedic surgeons.
I fix the black boxes that help fly the airplanes.
I do a lot of communication, navigation, flight controls, elevators, ailerons, spoilers, flaps.
I inspect aircraft and aircraft parts. We do X-ray, eddy current, ultrasonics without taking the airplane apart.
My typical day includes getting around 20 aircraft ready. We send about 12 to 8 jets up at a time. Then they come down, we inspect them, we refuel them, and then they're back up in the air to fly again.
I always thought I wanted to be in the medical field, but I was like, well, instead of taking care of people, I'll take care of airplanes. And in extension, I'll take care of the pilots that fly in those airplanes.
I heard about this job through high school, actually. In between my junior and senior years during the summer, they gave us an internship. Came back here after I graduated, and they decided to keep me around.
They gave me an opportunity to work alongside the military without having to join the actual military.
They offer medical benefits that are second to none.
You don't have to worry about if you're going to get a pink slip next week.
You can remain here for life.
It's a good place to start and a good place to end.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Neal, and I'm a talent acquisition consultant for AFCS. Tonight, I'll be your host for this AIM Hire webinar, where we'll discuss the nuts and bolts of what it means to be a civilian aircraft maintainer in the world's most powerful air force. This evening, you'll hear from current aircraft maintainers and mechanics, workforce analysts and program managers, and even a division director as they walk you through their particular career paths and what you can do to follow in their exact footsteps. We'll discuss the hiring process, advancement and educational opportunities, benefits, and some important things to include in your federal resume. Aircraft maintenance really is a fascinating career field that you may not have realized was open to civilians of all stripes and educational backgrounds. As we continue our discussion, we know you'll have questions. Be sure to type those in the Q&A box. We have additional recruiters behind the scenes answering those questions, plus we'll pull several to answer during this live webinar. If you're looking for more information or just want to head straight to the jobs, we invite you to visit our website at afciviliancareers.com. Now, without any further ado, let's introduce our panelists. First, from Altus Air Force Base, we have Ms. Debbie Brzezowski. Thank you for joining us, Debbie. Would you mind to tell the audience? Would you mind to tell the audience just a little bit about your background and your current role with AFCS?
Sure. I am a personnel liaison for the 97th Maintenance Group. I started working in federal service actually just over 12 years ago. I've always started working in staffing. I began as working in the base civilian personnel office. And then recently, probably 3 years ago, I started working for the 97th Maintenance Group. I work all their recruit actions. I work manning issues and problems. And I also work with the position control roster to make sure that we are manning our positions.
Okay. So although you've never turned wrenches on the flight line, you seem to be the aircraft maintenance expert.
Correct.
Thank you for being here, Debbie. Next, we have Mr. Jeff Carson. Jeff, I know you're down there at Laughlin Air Force Base, down there in Del Rio. Could you give us a little more information maybe about your background and what you do currently?
Yes, sir. Hello, welcome. My name's Jeff Carson. I'm a 22-year veteran, United States Air Force, retired aviation maintenance, from flight line maintenance all the way up to production super depot level maintenance as well. I'm currently at Laughlin Air Force Base. I am the functional manager for the 47th Maintenance Directorate. I work with all the division chiefs. We have 650 employees, all maintenance aspects of work going on. I deal also with retention, recruiting. I work with talent acquisitions and all aspects of that.
Awesome. Yeah, I've worked with both Jeff and Debbie for quite some time now. I appreciate you both being on tonight. Thank you. Next, we have Miss Holly Clark. Holly, could you tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing today as a civilian in the Air Force?
Yes, I'm a C-17 mechanic on the flight line. I'm a crew chief. I've been doing it for 8 years. Left for a couple, went commercial, but came back and love it.
Awesome. Thank you for being here this evening. Last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Renee Martinez. Renee, can you describe your career path for our audience and what you do there at Laughlin Air Force Base?
Yes, sir. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Renee Martinez. I work down here at Laughlin Air Force Base alongside with Mr. Jeff Carson. Here at the 47th Maintenance Directorate, I am the Division Director for the T-38 Division. Out of the 600 employees that Mr. Carson mentioned, 125 of them employees work under my supervision. So a great opportunity here with civil service at Laughlin, and a lot of open doors that are available in the civil service world. So hopefully you guys are interested in choose a career path with the aircraft maintenance.
Awesome. Thank you for being here tonight, Renee. And as for myself, again, my name is Mike Neal. I'm a talent acquisition consultant for Air Force Civilian Service. Much like Jeff, I'm a retired aircraft mechanic. I was a C-130 avionics technician for quite a few years, and I transitioned over to the B-1 where I was a production superintendent. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to answer questions from the audience and to learn about aircraft maintenance and civil service. So to kind of get things rolling, let's start with a poll. Of the choices listed below, what do you look for most in a career? Is it A, opportunities for professional and educational development? Is it B, a favorable work-life balance? C, organizational mission? Or D, health and wellness benefits? Or we're going to take just a second to let the poll add up. It looks like a majority of you actually chose a favorable work-life balance, and I honestly could not agree more. Holly, if you could you kind of go into depth and explain what your work-life balance looks like? I know that's one of the reasons that you transitioned back into federal service. Could you discuss that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, going to work every morning and coming home every evening, and then doing the mom stuff that I get to do. It means everything. Working commercial, I worked every weekend, I worked every holiday. I hardly ever got to spend time with my kids. And civil service is it's very, very family oriented. Very much.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. Thank you. Kind of as a follow-up to that question, I'd like to ask the audience directly, just so we kind of know who's out there. Do you have experience as an aircraft mechanic, either in the military or in the private sector? I'm assuming I know the answer to this question, but we'll see. Wow, I was completely incorrect. I was under the assumption that most people were aircraft mechanics, but it looks like a good majority, 76%, are not current aircraft mechanics, and that's okay. Just because you're not an aircraft mechanic today doesn't mean you can't be one tomorrow. One thing I'd like to pause and just highlight on is the importance of registering on our website. So our website, again, is afciviliancareers.com. And if you go to the upper right-hand corner, you're going to find a subscribe button. If you subscribe, you will be immediately fed positions as they come available. So just because a position is not maybe available in Florida or North Carolina or wherever it is that you're looking to go to right now, doesn't mean that that position couldn't be available in the future. So make sure you go register on our site. Again, afciviliancareers.com in the upper right-hand corner, the subscribe button. And kind of getting started, let's do a little background on AFCS. So AFCS is basically the name for all federal employees on Air Force installations. It's a group of more than 170,000 professionals working in the Air Force and serving side by side with our military airmen. What many people do not know is nearly 500,000 Air Force personnel, civilians actually make up of about 1/3 of the total workforce. Civilians work in more than 600 professional fields for the Air Force and in more than 80 locations across the country and across the world. We have civilian nuclear and civil engineers, rocket scientists, and a rapidly growing number of cybersecurity specialists. We also have civilian healthcare professionals, law enforcement officers, pilots, flight simulation instructors, contract specialists, and of course, aircraft maintainers. You name it, the Air Force civilians are more than likely probably doing it. And this elite team of civilians is instrumental in supporting our men and women in uniform and ensuring the Air Force can aim high, fly, fight, and win. As we continue the discussion, hopefully we'll answer some more of your questions about AFCS and specifically about being a civilian aircraft maintainer. Remember, drop your questions in the Q&A box for our panelists and our recruiters who are behind the scenes to help. Turning back to our panelists just for a period of time here, Jenny, I know there are several different types of aircraft maintainer and mechanic positions. Could you tell us a little bit about what's available?
Well, we have avionics, which is the electronic portion of it. Electronic integrated systems mechanic is the real name. We have aircraft electricians. We have aircraft hydraulics or hydraulic mechanics, and also fuel cell hydraulic mechanics, and aircraft mechanics and aircraft engine mechanics.
So it sounds like there are quite a few different opportunities there at Altus and across civil service for someone to serve. Thank you. Jeff, if you could, do me a favor and touch on just some of the basic requirements for some of these roles.
So starting out, the first thing that's important to know for these folks is, it's not required to have a college degree for these positions. Also, currently here at Del Rio Laughlin, we're looking to hire electronic mechanics as well. And with that experience, you got to have some kind of fundamental avionics, electronic experience in aviation application, able to use test equipment, read schematics, have the fundamental basic knowledge of avionics and how the application to that, as far as troubleshooting, replacing line replaceable units, anything that goes along with keeping a jet in the air.
Sure. A few questions that I get often, because again, I talk with aircraft mechanics who are looking to join federal service, is one of the things that I really want to highlight is the fact that an AMP is not required. We're looking for civilians and veterans. Is that correct?
That is correct. An AMP license is not required. And also, one thing with the folks that have prior military, you can use make sure you keep your DD-214. And when you submit your resumes through the DHA process through talent acquisitions, make sure you submit your DD-214 to show that experience level as well.
Right. Absolutely. One more question that I get regarding kind of qualifications is, do civilian maintainers have to own their own tools, or do you have them there at your tool crib?
No, we provide all tools to include all of our personal protective equipment. Just like we are the Air Force, but we're just civilians, and we're treated as such. Just like an airman, the day he gets to his first assignment, he gets a toolbox issued to him day in, day out. We do the same thing. We do tool control. Every piece of equipment that is needed to work on an aircraft is provided to them.
I appreciate it. Kind of going back to Debbie just for a brief second, we're getting a question from the audience that's coming in, and it says, it seems that a good majority of who we're looking for are prior military mechanics. Could you talk about some civilian mechanics? Are there people that have gone to, maybe an institution to get their civilian A&P? Can we bring on people that are strictly civilians that have never served in the military?
We also take applicants from technology schools. Many of the technology schools are starting aviation programs where they'll go to school. We usually call it a grow your own mechanic program. We also take mechanics from airlines if they've worked at airlines, any number of airlines that would qualify them as long as they're showing the experience on their resumes.
Sure. So just to confirm, you do not need military experience to be a civilian aircraft maintainer, such as Holly is a prime example of that. Kind of going right back to you, Debbie, just for a minute, I'd like to discuss the federal resume. I know you've had probably more experience with the federal resume. You said you were in staffing there, and could you touch on the importance of length?
It's very important that you put all your experience in there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's really important that you put all your experience in there. Even volunteer experience is something you should add to your resume. Make sure that it's narrative and not just bullets. I know that if you go out to resume makers on the website, or when we were taught in school, they asked, or showed us how to do bullets, but a federal resume is better put as a narrative one. And make sure you're listing everything, not just I cleaned the room, I used a broom and swept, I used a mop and mopped, I put together shelves with screwdrivers and tools and pliers. Make sure you're listing everything in there, because there's a lot of keywords that will pop for the KSAs or the skills that they need for that position. So make sure you're putting everything in there, and it doesn't have to be just one page. Actually, the longer it is, the better. Make sure that the experience that you have for the particular job that you're applying for is closer to the top. It doesn't always have to be chronological. It should be as close to the top of your resume as possible.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think a lot of people, civilians maybe that have never served in the military, or even military members that have retired, such as Jeff and myself, were taught that you have to keep your resume short and sweet and to the point, right? Like 1 to 2 pages max. And a lot of people don't understand or aren't familiar with the federal resume process. And it really is, it's different than the civilian sector. As a prime example, or prime recent example, earlier this week, I had an aircraft electrician with 25 years of experience apply to one of my vacancies. And I looked at his resume, and on his resume, he just had positions that he held listed with no duties and responsibilities. He didn't have anything, no meat and potatoes, if you will, to his federal resume. And the problem is that when someone gets hired on at federal service, someone down at Air Force Personnel Center staffing, they will look at their resume and they will compare it to the position description. And if they can't clearly see that the individual applying to the position has displayed those knowledge, skills, and abilities in those specific tasks, then there's a possibility they could deem them as not qualified. So a lot of people don't know. That's one of the biggest reasons you have to really expand and go in depth with that federal resume, because it can be really the difference between securing a position or not securing a position. So,
Right.
yeah. Jeff, once someone applies to one of your positions, what can they expect? Do you send them a plane ticket to lovely Laughlin Air Force Base for an in-person interview, or do you shoot them an email or give them a phone call? What's that process kind of look?
I wish it was that easy, but no. Once I do receive the resume, I'll go through it and I'll kind of vet it per se. I add the position description of what the job entails. And then if I see that they could feel the knowledge, skills, and ability throughout their resume, and it describes that they could perform at a full level of that PD, I will then send that out to the one of 5 selecting officials. And then the second official will do the same thing. He'll review it. He may call, he may interview, he may not. But once we get it back and the selection's made, an RPA is cut. It's a personal request for personal action. Once that's cut, it goes up to a CPO, Civilian Personnel Office, and then at that point they'll do another same thing. They'll vet the resume, send it off to Air Force Personnel Center. Air Force Personnel Center then takes control of it. It goes through the offices there. Again, they'll go through some staffers. They'll go through some classifiers, and then also. And then once they found the individual is qualified and able to fill the position, AFPC will then send out a tentative job offer to that individual. And at that point, it becomes a pre-employment where the individual may have to do physical, drug, if it's a drug tested position, they have to get a drug test and go from there.
Sure. So
it's about a 50+ day process. On average, we do have some that exceed that, and we have some that are a lot quicker.
That was going to be my next question: is approximately how long should someone expect to be brought on with federal service? And I've had the exact same kind of experience as what you're talking to. Sometimes it's quicker. What's awesome is that we use that direct hire authority that you just touched on and talked about a little bit. A lot of people maybe aren't familiar with that. That's basically an expedited hiring authority. There are other federal agencies out there, other places to apply, but because we use that direct hire authority, it's so much more efficient and so much quicker in regards to coming on board and actually getting brought on. So yeah, thank you for touching on that for us. I'd like to change gears just a little bit and hear from Holly. Holly, you have an amazing story about how you started and kind of where you're at now. If you could just kind of break down your story and tell us a little bit about your service with Air Force Civilian Service.
Well, I can say working civil service completely changed my life. What was going on before and what it is now is completely different. I was struggling, single mama, trying to raise 4 kids. And I had to work on my own vehicle because I couldn't afford, someone to do it for me. And that's where it started. Actually, I fixed my vehicle, the cheap way, my way, me doing it. And I was like, you know what, this is awesome. I like working on stuff. So I went to the college and I told them, I want to enroll in automotive, and they told me that aviation maintenance was possible. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I want to do that. And went through the school and hit the flight line and been doing it for years. And it is awesome.
That's good. That's good it's refreshing to hear your story because, some people, different things are important to different people. And it's not always about the salary. Sometimes it's about the benefits and the work-life balance. I think that it's refreshing to hear your story. So thank you. Can you talk a little bit about going to the civilian sector and then coming back to Air Force Civilian Service? How
Sure.
that worked or what happened there?
Yeah, I was civil service for a few years, and uh, I I left and I went commercial airlines. I worked for Hawaiian Airlines. Actually, I moved from Oklahoma to Hawaii and worked commercial. And even in Hawaii, I could not wait to get back. You know, there was no work home. There was no balance. It's they expect you 100% and every weekend and every holiday, and even at the end of your shift, if you have a aircraft that's broken for whatever reason, you're not leaving until it's fixed. And I have actually finished my shift and worked all the way after midnight, and then go home and have to come back the next morning. Where civil service, we have shifts, and they really care about the fact that we have families at home. And the end of you come to the end of your shift, your aircraft isn't fixed for whatever reason, you have the next shift that comes in behind you. You talk, you do your turnover, and you go home to your family.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Work-life balance is again, agreeing with the audience, is I think that's one of the most beneficial things about working for federal services, is finding that correct work-life balance. I know you've probably been covered in hydraulic fluid and jet fuel, and you've gone through the struggles of flight line work, right? What type of character, or what type of grit, what type of person makes a good aircraft mechanic?
Well, willing to learn is a really, really big one. I would say integrity. Being able to trust the person next to you, being able to trust the person who worked on something before you came in. And I think integrity is, I think it's, in my opinion, it's the biggest thing.
For sure, I couldn't agree more. Kind of changing over to Renee. Renee, I'd love to hear your story too. I know that where you started and where you're at now, it's an inspiration to a lot of people out there. If you could just touch on where you started and kind of your story about how you got to be where you're at today.
Right. So my great opportunity started when I was in high school as a senior here at in Del Rio. We were offered the Grow Your Own program, which is a course which they teach you the basic fundamentals of aviation safety, tech order guidance, and how to read and utilize it. Right. So it kind of opened the door for us here, and was able to get hired on. So when I hired on and accepted my first job here at Laughlin, I started as a WG5, which is a tractor operator. That is like a entry level position, right? So I started there, started learning, and of course, having, like Holly said, having the integrity and wanting to learn more, and taking every opportunity that's out there, because working for the Air Force and civil service, they have evolved so much where they have so many opportunities for you, training courses. They can send you to ALS, what they call, it's Airmen Leadership School. It's a 6-week course, and it basically teaches you how to become a leader. So it gives you all the traits and skills levels that you need. So all these opportunities were afforded to me, which was great, and management around here, they listen to the employees, they see the skills and the motivation that the employees have. So they offer you these training opportunities, which is awesome. So from 5, I started going to a 7 on the flight line. And of course, I spent about 7 years on the flight line, 7, 8, 9, and then moved into a maintenance hangar. For there, I was a aircraft mechanic, engine mechanic, structures, and then went to be into the management cycle. Going into management, this is where the Airman Leadership School, the ALS school, really helped out. So once the opportunity for the management came in, of course, the training, the Air Force, like I said, it has evolved so much where now all the opportunities that the military has for training, they offer it to civilian service employees as well. There's many opportunities for everybody to take. So it's a great service.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing your story. I talk to quite a few people every day who are looking to break into federal service, who are looking to get into aircraft maintenance. So when you started as a tractor operator, did you have any aircraft maintenance experience at all, or did you that was your starting point?
That was my starting point. Just what they taught us in the Grow Your Own program, which was basically launch, recover, and and that's where we started. And from there, it was just a turn and burn. As you're going and learning, see other people doing some jobs, and that's what they do, the OJT, on the job training. So you take these taskers, and people teach you, and you get off in your training course, and it's the opportunities are there. It's just wanting how far you want to take your career.
Right, and about capitalizing on those opportunities, right? So for like I'm getting questions specifically for you. People are wanting to know a few things. Say for instance, if you have a recent college graduate, someone that just maybe finished a bachelor's degree, and they can't find work, or they can't find meaningful employment, such as federal service, such as civil service, what would you suggest to them? Is there a position where you could start out as a tractor operator? Is there a starting point or a starting position you can get into aircraft maintenance there at Laughlin or in civil service?
Yes, of course. And just like Mr. Jeff Carson mentioned, through the DHA, the Direct Hire Authority, there's entry-level positions, just as I mentioned, the WG5 tractor operators, having the basic knowledge of towing, knowing the equipment. And yeah, from there, it's just a starting point, and it's great. And once you start learning, you can also find different career fields, not only in aircraft maintenance. Maybe the education that you have in the background might fit into one of the career fields we have in aircraft maintenance. And yeah, you can apply for those as well.
Sure, and that's actually where I was going to go with my next question. So if someone, say for instance, they were, I'm getting the question right now live from the audience. If someone was a prior aircraft sheet metal mechanic, right? Is it possible for them to transition into maybe an avionics position or a hydraulic position? Obviously, I'm assuming it is, because it sounds like you did exactly that. You went from tractor operator and you moved up the ranks. How could someone go about transitioning into maybe an aircraft maintenance career field that they didn't have any direct experience in prior to that time? Is that possible?
Oh, yes, it is. A lot of these opportunities come through, cross training. So those opportunities are available, especially with civil service. And just like it is, especially for these individuals that have the prior military, is the same, cross training. It's great. It's a great opportunity. It opens a lot of doors.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And I think that, general consensus is that people think just because they've done one thing for so long, they can't branch out and do other things in aircraft maintenance. Debbie, do you see that a lot at Altus? Do you see people maybe start, like Renee's discussing, as a tractor operator?
Yeah, we do get quite a few.
So you have people transition from tractor operator to engine shop to fuel cell, and kind of move around where the opportunities are, right?
Yes, we actually are able to detail. If an individual wants to go learn a different skill, we can detail them into a position for 120 days so that they can get that experience added to their resumes. Or they can ask their supervisor, hey, I want to move over to this, or I'd like to learn this. So yes, there are those opportunities.
What about, kind of going right back to you, Debbie, what about if someone, say for instance, if they maybe have F-15 experience, or maybe they've worked, on 737s or 767s, or they have very specific aircraft maintenance experience. Are you guys set up? What does your training program look like? Are you, would you recommend they would apply to a job there at Altus or for civil service? Are you guys equipped and prepared to take on that training that comes with somebody that may not be familiar with your platforms?
Yes, if they have that basic aircraft mechanic experience, we have lots and lots of training programs or in different courses, TDYs that we can send them on to get them up to speed for our plane that they're assigned to. So yes, there are those opportunities.
And just to let the audience know, there at Altus, you have KC-135s, KC-46s, and C-17s. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
And then in comparison, Jeff, I know at Laughlin, your airplanes look a little bit different than the ones they do at Altus. What do you guys have there again?
Right, we have T6s, T1s, and the T38. And just throwing a pitch out with our training, you know, we also have the ATC MTC, which is a military train or maintenance training center. It's by AATC. It just opened up recently within the past year, and we send individuals that are outside of those that came from different airframes or new to the maintenance field, and we do T38 familiarization, T1 familiarization, electronic mechanics, and they do flight controls, hydraulics. They do a multitude of training there, and they have the capability there at Randolph Air Force Base. Then we also get seats in the regular Air Force pipeline tech school that we send individuals to. Like we sent some guys at sheet metal school here recently, and they're going to be sitting side by side with the airmen that are going through tech school in active duty.
I never realized that. I'm a 21-year Air Force mechanic veteran, and I never realized that civil service can send people through the tech schools like that. Mm-hmm. Now, is that part of the training when they first come on, or would they come on with that in their contract, if you will? Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say contract, but it is something that we offered, and it was an internal thing that we offered some individuals to take on a different position in the maintenance directorate. But yeah, there's opportunities galore with training here at Laughlin.
That's good. And I think it's like that basically all over the Air Force, all through federal service. I think there's always opportunities to get ahead, just because you might start as a tractor operator or maybe in a lower WG position. I think the cream always rises to the top, right? If you have a good work ethic, and like Holly said, you know, you have integrity and you do what's right. I think people notice that and they reward that in federal service. So one question that I'm gotten that is kind of a free for all, whoever would like to take it. I'm getting a question from someone who says, I've applied, but they haven't gotten a job quite yet in aircraft maintenance. Is there any kind of advice that you could give to this individual to maybe make their resume stand out or help them stand out? And I'll actually start with Debbie, because you're the resume expert, right? For federal service. But what about someone that's
I would have them go back and look at their resume and make sure that it has those keywords in it.
Yeah, so I'll chime in on this one as well. I think that the importance of covering the knowledge, skills, and abilities in those key words. For instance, in the position description, yeah, if it says you have to have, you know, just as an example, 3 years of wiring harness replacement, and there's no mention of any wiring harness replacement in someone's resume, then you can potentially, you know, deduct that they wouldn't be qualified for the position. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're fine. They can also reach out if it was through USA Jobs or something like that. There's always a phone number you can call and ask them, talk to the staffer and find out what it was that disqualified them.
Okay, that's great advice. Yeah, I didn't realize that was an option as well. Holly, we're actually getting a couple questions for you. What was that process like when you transitioned from civil service and back into civil service? Was it an easier application process? Was it long and drawn out? Did you have to do additional tasks, or what was that process like?
Well, leaving, out processing takes a couple days, and honestly, just walking around and, telling all these people bye, that's kind of rough. The people, you work with. Yes. And, but so, whenever I come back, first of all, I heard the rumor that I was going to get laid off because of COVID. And I crossed my fingers and I said, please lay me off, because I want to go back to Oklahoma and I want to go back and work on base. And so, the process, it was kind of the same as, as the first time, but they, first of all, there's someone who is I felt like she was assigned to me. Like, I emailed her, she emailed me, I was able to call her anytime. And there was always someone to call to talk to. Okay, what do I do next? And I literally had a checklist. Okay, you need to do this, you need to do this. I would get emails, hey, complete this questionnaire, by this certain date. I mean, everything is 100% laid out, and you have instructions for everything. It was pretty simple. I mean, I'm glad I did it.
For sure. What documents were required? I know your previous appraisals or performance reports, did you have to provide all those and basically just give those to civilian personnel?
Well, luckily, when I left, I was handed my folder. That's what I call it. I'm sure there's an official name for it, but it's a folder that your supervision keeps. And every award you get goes in there. Every certificate of any kind of training goes in there. All of these things that you've built for years are in this folder. And so when you leave, they give it to you. And luckily, I just stuck it in a box and it went with me to Hawaii and came back. Yes. And so, I mean, the relief, whenever I handed it to my supervisor, he was like, wow, this is awesome that you have this. It was pretty easy.
Yeah, that's why you keep those important documents, right?
Yes.
Another question, I'm trying to focus on a lot of these questions from our audience because they are good questions, and a lot of people per our poll don't have specific aircraft maintenance experience. This is for Debbie or Renee. Probably Debbie. I think Renee, you touched on your Grow Your Own program. Debbie, could you explain kind of the way your Grow Your Own program works there at Altus, and just what that looks like there?
Sure, it's a 18-month process. We do offer it at the high school for free to juniors and seniors. If they begin it in their senior year, then the next year to finish up is free. But it's 18 months. They learn general aviation first. It goes through that, they graduate that program, and then they actually go into the power plant, to get their education in that, and then they're allowed to go and get their A&P license. So it's an 18-month process. It's your local. We work with them. We go out and encourage them. We actually go out and talk about the process of coming on. So it's really good. The program that we had, we've been doing it for over 20 plus years here at Altus Air Force Base.
And what an awesome opportunity for a young man or woman who's, just, getting ready to graduate high school, or maybe just graduated and they're 18, 19 years old, kind of figuring out what they're going to do in life. What an awesome opportunity, an awesome career field to get into.
There's
Jeff,
also opportunities for people that haven't been in aviation that after a while, 25, 30-year-olds that want to give it a try.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, that's an incredible opportunity. One question that I'm getting that you guys are more than welcome to touch on, but is what's the difference between Air Force civilian careers and USA jobs? I get asked that question actually very often, so I'll field that real quick. Now, really the difference between afciviliancareers.com and USA jobs is that Air Force civilian careers, we highlight and capture positions on Air Force installations in comparison to USA jobs, who advertises for federal positions all throughout the country. In our hiring process, kind of going back to what you explained a little bit, Jeff and Debbie, with the DHA, our hiring process is expedited. Sometimes when you apply on different federal hiring websites, that process can be a little cumbersome. It can take 6, sometimes 7 months. And with DHA, when you apply to a position on Air Force civilian careers, your resume gets in front of a hiring manager. And if they interview you and your resume meets the intent and you meet the qualifications for the position, that hiring manager can actually pull the trigger, if you will, and start the hiring action right off the bat. So you don't have to wait for that long process as you do with other federal agencies. So I would highly suggest anyone listening that's interested, whether you're an aircraft maintainer or you're not an aircraft maintainer, I would highly suggest going to airforceciviliancareers.com. And again, click that subscribe button in the upper right-hand corner, because today we're hearing from Laughlin Air Force Base and from Altus Air Force Base. They are just 2 bases in the grand scope, but that doesn't mean that a position, in Florida might become available down the road, or a position somewhere where you're looking to go could come available right down the road. So, how often? Bless you. God bless you. How often? And Debbie, I know the answer to this, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. How often do you have available positions, or do you have openings there at Altus? Is it a regular thing? Do they come open and closed often? Yeah, could you touch on that?
They do. We have to go with, we're getting an older group of mechanics. So when we became civilian maintainers, they transferred out of the Air Force into civilian service. And so there's retirements, there's people moving to other positions. So there's always openings. I don't know that we'll ever be 100% filled, but 90% would be good. So there's always, and you can always, we keep the resumes for when open.
So you keep the resumes on file if someone were to apply to a position, and maybe if you didn't have an opening quite then, it's possible that you could have an opening for them in the future. So again, you kind of cut out there just for a second. You said you do keep resumes on file, and you'll go back to those resumes.
Yes, so we keep them for longer than they probably want to work, but there's always openings. Something happens in somebody's life and they decide to move to California or something. So there's an opening. So we go to that file, we pull out their resume, and we contact them and ask them if they're still interested. That we've received your resume from talent acquisition, and we just want to see if you're still interested in a position here at Altus.
Right, and I think that one of the reasons that you have openings, or you're shooting for that 90% target, is because of the size of the maintenance effort there at Altus. I didn't realize that before you and I started working together. There's a massive group of people there at Altus. accomplishing a massive mission, you know.
Yes, I think that we're at 825 authorized positions, and we got 8 new airplanes with the KC-46. So there's a lot of positions.
That's a lot of people. That's a lot of civilian aircraft mechanics in one place.
Yes,
it certainly is. And just to kind of go to Jeff, I know your size in your unit, you said you guys have about 650 mechanics down there at Laughlin. Do you do the same thing as Altus? Will you go back and revisit a potential application if maybe somebody doesn't get selected right out of the gate?
I do. I keep a folder on my computer of resumes, and I have it all filed out by position. And if we lose a position, I'll go back in. And I got some notes on some that, this hiring manager has called, the selecting official has called individuals not interested due to location or the pay, or whatever the case may be. So
sure.
I can send those out again and reintroduce those candidates to the selecting officials.
Sure. Yeah. Sometimes situations change, you never know what's going to happen in life and how your situation is going to change. One thing that I'm not sure that we discussed on, I want to touch on it real quick, is could you explain, again, Jeff, this is for you. Could you explain the background check process? I get that question asked quite a bit. Some people will say they've never had a background check. Is that a showstopper for someone that's never served?
No, not at all. The biggest thing with the background checks is just being honest. I forget the form number off the top of my head, but there's going to be, if you get selected for a position, you're going to have to, if you do have some speeding tickets or DUIs, whatever the case may be, as long as you list them, the civilian personnel office may reach out back out to you and ask you to provide some documents to clear some things up. But it's definitely not a showstopper here at Laughlin Air Force Base anyway.
So if someone doesn't have a clearance, that's okay. You can still potentially get them a clearance and work with them to get brought on board.
Exactly right. It may take them a little bit longer to bring them on board. And then once they get on board, they may have like an interim favorable clearance. But again, it's just a process of getting a federal position.
Right. Holly, before we sign off, I know we're kind of getting short on time. If you could just walk us through what a day in the life of a crew chief there at Altus is. I mean, do you always work day shift? Do you work swing shift sometimes? Is there a mid shift? What's a day like in your life?
Well, luckily, I'm day shift, which works out great if you have, kids at home. So I go to work in the morning, I check out my tools, which, day to day, I don't know if I'm flying. I don't know if I need to do an inspection. I don't know if I've got, something's broke and I'm going to change a part. I don't know until I get to roll call, but, so I check out a toolbox, just
Sure.
so I'm ready. I go to roll call. They tell me what I'm doing. I hit the line and, sometimes it's inspection, it's
Right.
8 hours, it takes 8 hours to do it. But sometimes something needs troubleshooting. It's not just simply like, hey, go change this part. Sometimes it's, hey, you've got this, this is doing this and we need to figure out why. And that's a lot of fun, really. Troubleshooting is fun, in my opinion. So it always changes. It's always different every day. And there's not that, you don't have that drag into work and work off of muscle memory, and work is never boring. It's something different every day, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the things that I enjoyed most about being an aircraft mechanic, like you just talked about, you go to roll call and you get your assignment and you go do it, you know, and you fix your aircraft and you watch it take off, and that satisfaction that you have of launching, marshaling that aircraft out, there's not a lot of things that compare to that. You know, that's a life-changing moment. The first time you marshal one of those monster C-17s out, you know, and to know that your efforts are what made that happen. You know, that feeling of satisfaction that's probably one of the most satisfying feelings I've ever had the first time.
It is. And even the intro video that played at the beginning of this, it gave me goosebumps, because everything that they said is exactly how it is. And my first time to step foot on a flight line, they said, you know, hey, this plane is about to block and we need you to marshal it. And, you know, I had someone standing there with me, you know, but, you know, there I was waving my arms, and this aircraft was coming towards me, this big aircraft. And, you know, they take off, and I just stood there and just, I'm in awe every day. It is very satisfying.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. There's good and bad with everything, right? There's days where you come home, like I said, drenched in hydro fluid or jet fuel, and then there's days.
Yes. Even today, I came home and I did take a shower, but still my hands are dirty. You know, I can't get them completely clean. It takes a couple days to get, you know, grease out of all the grooves. But, you know, I look at my hands and I just think I provide a wonderful house for my family, and I drive the truck that I love. You know, it's completely changed my life.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Like, if I could piggyback on what Holly was saying, you know, the Air Force and pretty much any military service nowadays, you know, they push, you know, Airmen concept, right? So now the Airmen concept, you know, we take that, you know, very, very to heart, because everybody plays a very important part, you know, in serving our country. Because just like Holly is saying, you know, we're boots on the ground, you know, we fix these airplanes. So we are playing a very important part with the service of the military, because we are helping to train student pilots, instructor pilots to go serve our country and protect us. So we also play a very important part for the military as civil service employees.
A huge part.
Yes.
Like you just talked about, because without Air Force civilian service aircraft mechanics, those pilots don't get trained, right? And if those pilots don't get trained, then our combat capability of really our country is in jeopardy. So what we do as civilian maintainers, it's huge.
It's very huge. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it looks like that's all the time we have for today. Before we sign off, I just want to re-emphasize the importance of registering on our site. Just because the location or position is not available today doesn't necessarily it won't be available tomorrow. I want to thank all our panelists for joining us today. Thank you for jumping on and sharing your stories. And I'd like to thank the audience members for tuning in too. Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening.